Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Go With Your Gut podcast. I am your host, Lauren Dreyer, and today we are discussing what do you focus on? And this comes to mind because, as a lot of you know, I am in the middle of the United States, and it is the time of year where we have the American football, but we have the Super Bowl coming up. And excitingly enough, this year, my team is going. And that just happened. We qualified last weekend. And I'm always entertained to watch the post-game press conferences because I think it's fascinating to hear what the reporters ask the players and how the players respond. And yesterday I was listening to them, and naturally all of the questions are focused on you were expected to lose, or you were expected to do this, or these were your statistics coming into the game. And 90%, if not all of the players, responded to all of those questions in some form of, we weren't thinking about that. We were just focusing on the next play or the next step. Or one of them got repeatedly asked about a statistic saying that he was behind in sacks, which is the defense taking down the quarterback before he throws the ball away. So they said, oh, well, you're behind on expected sacks, or I don't remember how exactly they I don't remember how they worded it, but his response was, I wasn't even thinking about that going to the game. I go into each game and I'm focused on playing how I need to play and what I need to do. And, I play each play according to where we're at and what I need to focus on and how to make the plays. But they kept asking him about those statistics. And time again, they'd say, you guys weren't favored to win, or how do you feel about that? And, of course, there was all of the media and trash talk that goes into pretty sure any athletic there is. But they were all like, well, yeah, it kind of got us fired up, and we were kind of excited to come out and show them what we were made of. But like that, it didn't really get us down that, maybe we weren't favored to win, because we knew we had a hard game in front of us. And we just came out, played our game, did what we needed to do with what we had. And they just kept saying, we're not focused on what the analysts say. We're not focused on what the critics say. We're not focused on what those statistics say, because they're just that, they're statistics. And yeah, sometimes we need to pay attention to some of those, and maybe they can predict some things to a pretty close degree. But I thought it was the coolest thing that each one of them came up and said, we're not focused on that. We're not focused on what the analytics say. We're not focused on what all of the announcers were predicting based on whatever facts they were using to predict. They all said, I'm focused on the next game. I am focused on what I need to do in that moment to get us to our goal. And that, it got me thinking, because one of the players kept repeating this, and he almost kind of sounded like he was getting annoyed. And he started saying, I don't know why y'all are focusing on this. You're really blowing it out of proportion. And he didn't have anything else to say, because that's not how he thought. And it made me think about how we focus on things in our everyday life that we're working towards. And there is a time and a place for focusing on maybe projections or analytics, or yes, the time of day that your post best works on social media or whatever, when the most people are on to see your post, whatever that is. But there's such a focus on negative, on here's what you're doing wrong. Statistics on, as they were focused on those press conferences, of here's how you're coming up short, here's where you need to adjust. There is a time and a place for here's where you need to adjust. But statistics are not the only important thing. And at the end of the day, it's where do I need to focus? Because not every area of either your life or relationships or your business is always going to be on point. There's always going to be things that need the work and things that are, producing beautifully, whatever, however you want to say that. But there's such a focus on that negative aspect, on here's how you're coming up short. Here's what you need to work on. Here's what those statistics say of you should be here by now. And yes, take those maybe with a grain of salt and use them as one learning business tool, but then move on and say, what do I really need to focus on? What areas, aside from the statistics, aside from whoever is telling you what you need to work on, okay, take the advice and then focus again on where you need to focus in that time, because this also goes towards hearing criticism from wherever it's coming from, because people can say anything and everything, and it comes from all over, and it's here's what you're not doing good enough, here's where you need to be better, or I don't think this sounded very good. And we can take that for what it is and then focus in on the area that you need to maybe polish or build or get better at, whatever that looks like. But I used to hear a phrase a lot, and it was, what you focus on, you find. And that goes for both positive and negative. So when you focus on what negative stuff could happen, when you focus on where you're lacking, you start to find that. You find the lacking mindset, you find the failure pieces, you find all of that. But when you say, yes, this is here, yes, it is a possibility, and I've considered it, I know the risks, but I'm going to choose to focus on this positive outcome, and I'm going to work towards that, and I am going to learn what I need to, I'm going to skill up, and I'm going to focus on making that happen. And like I said, I'm not saying that the research, the statistics, the numbers, I'm not saying any of that is wrong, but it's not the only factor. So take that for what it is, and then focus on what you want to do. Focus on where you want to go. Focus on the good outcome and not what could maybe potentially happen over here, but you really don't want that to happen. If you focus on the good, if you expect the good is much more likely to come out. Even if you don't know the result, you have absolutely no control over it. When you go into it expecting that something good is going to come out, when you focus on that win, the win is much more likely to happen. And I can tell you from personal experience that whenever I have stewed or ruminated on something bad, I used to get so worked up that it was like inevitable that that bad thing was going to happen. And I would get myself so worked up, so in my head about it, that I couldn't focus on anything else. And I couldn't focus on doing what I needed to do to make that good thing happen. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one out there that did that, or that, I mean, heck, I still do that sometimes, and I'm a lot better at catching myself now. But when you focus, when you ruminate, when you stew on that negative outcome, it's much more likely to happen, and you're much more likely to get that negative outcome than when you say, this is what I want to happen. I'm going to do everything I can that's in my control to make it happen. And you know what? Life is life. Reality, yes, does happen. And focus on the good. We deal with the setbacks, and then we keep moving towards the good. Because, sometimes setbacks do happen, and that's reality. And that's where we learn. That's where we say, okay, this happened. I can't do anything about it now that it already happened. So how do I recalibrate, readjust, and then still keep my eyes focused on where I want to go? Because that's a messy path, but it doesn't mean that you're not still going to get to that outcome. It may look different than you thought. It may take a different amount of time than you thought, whether that be shorter or longer. But I don't know about you all, but even if I don't have control over what happens, it takes a lot less energy out of me. And in fact, it gives me a lot more energy, and it makes me feel a lot more accomplished to focus on the good and to go for the good rather than to focus on the bad, get myself all worked up, be worried, be frustrated, I don't know, whatever. I would rather put my energy towards focusing on the good things that are coming out of it, and not put nearly as much energy into whatever negative, bad outcome. And it may not even be negative. It just might not be the outcome that you're looking for. But I did a blog years ago, and it happened to be after we had another crazy football game. And I thought it was the coolest thing because they were talking about taking it one step at a time. And they were talking about how do we make it happen? How do we get out of our heads? So you focus on the one step at a time, and you focus on the good. It doesn't matter what anybody else is saying, and it doesn't matter who is trash talking, what they're talking about, but focusing on that good and not worrying about whether anybody else is blowing it out of proportion or not. You know the goal, you know what you're trying to do, you know what you want it to look like, whether that end up being what it looks like or not. But think about what you focus on. Listen to that gut and decide if what outside or internal critics are saying. Look at those numbers. It's not a bad thing to look at the numbers, because numbers are worth something. They're worth a lot in some cases, but they're a tool in helping you to get where you're going, but there are lots of other tools. So think about what you take into account when you're making decisions. Think about what you're focusing on when you're trying to get to a goal, and let everything else fall off your back if it needs to, and maybe take a cue from Chris Jones and say, y'all made a bigger deal out of that than what it needed to be. That was nowhere near what I was focused on. I was focusing on my job, doing what I was there to do, and getting a result that I was there to get. And we had success. I got it done because his numbers, his statistics were not the same things that everybody else was focusing on. And I find that to be true quite a lot. So I hope this has helped shift a little bit of perspective and maybe giving you an extra boost for into January and beginning of February to kind of maybe recalibrate into the year. But as I always leave you with, go with that gut and focus on what you need to focus on, not necessarily what everybody else tells you that you need to focus on. Focus on the good. Go with that gut and then keep going to get you where you want to get.